Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe. So it's about that time of year as we break in some new digs here. It's kind of a new era, new season of Sun Devil football. But before we dive into our annual spring preview with a couple of illustrious guests, that with some milestones, I should say, on the old appearance chart, we should talk a little bit about some happenings on the basketball court.
Yeah, we're getting used to our new digs. Your eyes do not deceive you. You see this nice, beautiful, lavish studio that we have here. All the best, only the best for us here at Speak of the Devils. Of course, we say that very humbly. Very grateful for the wonderful folks here. But yeah, there is a lot of news to cover because we are going to go a deep dive into spring football for Arizona State. But there's been some big news off the gridiron on the hardwood that we got to talk about, especially with the guests we got here.
All right, so our illustrious panel, of course, includes Rabino coming back for appearance number 111. Okay. So, yeah, that's a milestone for you a little bit.
It's kind of like a lucky number, right? Yeah, and we're here recording the day before St. Patrick's Day. So all folks like myself with Irish heritage is a day to rejoice. So a little bit of pre-St. Patrick's Day. Good luck. And as a heads up for everybody listening and watching, it's not P-A-T-T-Y. You can use P-A-D-D-Y. We like Patrick. But I'm not going to get off on too much of a tangent. Hode, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Brett.
All right, but Jordan, I'm not sure if you're an SNL fan, but you are now part of the Speak of the Devils 5-Timers Club. Congratulations.
Do I get my smoking coat?
Yes, that comes after the show. That's an off-air ceremony.
Yeah, I need to complete episode number 5.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, finish the drill.
Fair is fair.
Yeah, and so you're the 69th member of the 5-Timers Club here on Speak of the Devils of the 606 total guests.
Nice.
I'm honored.
I was going to say, there we go. All right, but let's talk a little Sun Devil hoops before we dive into some spring football. On the positive front, the women's team got in. Molly Miller in year one, continuing to work some minor miracles. The Devils are, maybe with a little bit of a caveat, the first 4, a 10 seed, as they'll take on Virginia. But I think, no matter what, no matter how you slice it, year one is a resounding success.
Yeah, and it's just really just such ASU fashion to be the last team called on Selection
Literally,
Sunday.
yeah.
And here we go again, the last 4 in. But there's no doubt that Molly Miller, to turn this program on a dime in her first year, I mean, you just really have to tip your hat. And as much as we talk about the Big 12 being a very challenging conference on the men's side, heck, it is very challenging on the women's side. I mean, I think that maybe 8 of ASU's opponents are in the NCAA tournament. ASU gets in there with a 9-9 record, so that shows you really just the gravity in a good way. Obviously, the accomplishment of Molly Miller. Tip of the hat to her. Great hire by Graham Rossini, but he has some bigger task coming up this week.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw that BYU and Utah were among the first few teams that were out as well. So, I mean, you've got nearly a dozen teams or so from the Big 12 that are really doing some things. So it's kind of like Brad and I talked about recently, that had they been left out, I mean, it obviously would have been a shame and it would have been disappointing, but I don't think it would have cast too much of a stain on the season and how this first year under Molly Miller should be viewed. But to have that is such a remarkable achievement. I think they're 14, 15 wins from last year, something like that. It's just a ridiculously dramatic turnaround. It's great that you get what you expected. She was supposed to come in to be a winner and to turn things around, and to be able to do that year one, and everything she does out in the community, just being a great face of Sun Devil athletics. I think it's an absolute home run hire here in this first year for her.
Yeah, and she's just a program builder. You see that happen at GCU, now ASU. I don't know if anyone expected how quickly that would happen, and that's kind of perhaps the scary thought for the rest of the Big 12 is this was year one. The foundation is now set. I talked to her yesterday. She was like, "This is the new standard. This is what we're doing." So it's going to be cool to see a full off season with her, a full recruiting class, everything that's coming in, and as she continues to build up year after year.
So I got to say, Joe, I mean, every year in which she's appeared on our live show at 100 Mile Brewing, I mean, they made the dance.
I mean, it's got to be written into the contract somehow that's got to be a future commitment every single year, because you just can't take risks against that sort of thing. Again, she's building up. He's talking about building the program. That raises the expectations. So maybe we're going to have to get more appearances as her success continues to grow.
All right, now switching things over to the men, of course, the move that we all know was coming for 10 months. Bobby Hurley is done. His tenure is at an end. The search that we'll talk about in a moment here. But before we, move on, let's take a second to remember what was. The 11 years under Bobby Hurley, some good times, some frustrating times. Gentlemen, how are you going to remember the Bobby Hurley Guard U era in Tempe?
I mean, for me, it's interesting because, like you said, there's a lot of both. Because some of the highest highs, I've been following Sun Devil basketball since like the early 90s, the Headache Smith and the Dwayne Fontana days and that sort of thing. And some of the highest highs have all come under his tenure. But when you look at the numbers, and I kind of crunch them in preparation of all the discussions I'm sure we'll be having among them, but you look at a lot of the key metrics that he'd be judged by, and compared to the predecessors that came before him, such as obviously Herb Sendek, Rob Evans, even Bill Frieder, his numbers are kind of near the bottom. Now then he played a tough schedule. So again, there's this ebb and flow about things, to where there were the high highs of some of those incredible wins and some of the runs that they had, and even that that COVID season that really was what could have been. We say that a lot for Sun Devil baseball for that season, and for good reason. But the basketball program was red hot at that time. They could have made a pretty solid tournament run. They could have maybe even won the Pac-12 that year. So a lot of what could have been, but man, those highs were very high. But the frustrating times and the inability just to really kind of keep it on the right level and keep things surging forward. And when you have, and we can go a lot of directions with this, but when you have that 2017-2018 season, that meteoric rise they had up to number 3, and then things go kind of flat in conference play, it was a up and down deal. But there was a lot of energy. The community got galvanized in a way that I don't think I've ever seen, really. Like, even in some of the heights that Sendek had with those really great teams with James Harden, Jeff Pendergraft, that sort of thing, there was excitement, but it wasn't quite at that level. I mean, I was a kid during that Sweet 16 run in 94, 95, but again, he brought quite a bit to it. But after that tournament run a few years back, to the point that it just didn't really continue on a high level, didn't get back to the tournament, moving into the Big 12, really difficult time competing there. Just the writing was on the wall. So some great things were done, but I think it's just time to try something else.
Jordan, you had a really great tweet the other day of just kind of remembering the man that Bobby Hurley was. People see the fiery nature, the tantrums at times on the sideline, but how did you interact? I mean, as somebody who was there from day one, how do you remember kind of Bobby Hurley, the man as well as the coach? Yeah,
I think a lot of people will see him on the sideline and think he's one certain way, and that's just all he is, and he's just this guy kind of marching down and he was actually a pretty funny guy and a really thoughtful guy. And a lot of times when he was cracking a joke, when he was being critical, it was mostly aimed at himself. And I think that's another thing, you hear some of these sound bites from him of, I might not be connecting with the team anymore, and I might not. I feel like he always looked inward when things weren't going wrong, not necessarily like, my players aren't living up to the standard and that sort of thing. And I did share on social media, I lost my cousin a couple of years ago, and he was one of the first ones to reach out. And a couple interactions with him kind of in those next couple months where he really went out of his way to make sure that I was good, my family was good, all that sort of thing. So just and he does it very quietly. So I think that's just a really cool thing that he would always do. So I think there were more levels to him than I think a lot of people thought. And I think wherever he ends up next, in the right spot, I still think he can really thrive. And with the right type of players, with the right type of mentality, maybe perhaps a little more mid-major. I think he talks about the underdogs. He loves the underdogs. In one of those settings, I think he really could find a formula to have a lot of success moving forward.
Do you think, Ho, that now that the 10 years over and the new era is upon us, that the program's in a better spot?
Look, I mean, if it's going to be a better spot, the new hires obviously going to really dictate a lot. And look, I mean, I'm not here. I don't want to go into some kind of filibuster on all the bad things that Bobby Hurley did do over here, because I think at the end of the day he did have good intentions, and I agree with Jody and Joe. It's a very complex tenure, because if you're in one place in 11 years, it's not like you're just suck here 11 times in a row and then we finally had enough. There definitely were a lot of peaks, but there also definitely a lot of valleys. And I think what's maybe kind of frustrating, if you really did like Bobby Hurley, that he would tell you in a press conference that he learned from his mistakes, but he hires assistant coaches, for example, that are there to bring just one player recruiting-wise. and either they bring him and he's a bust, or he's hired on staff and does not even deliver on the one player that he had to deliver. And then you have all the malcontents in the locker room. I mean, that COVID season, or maybe the season, I guess, after COVID, which was obviously affected by COVID, we all knew the locker room was an absolute mess. And Bobby Hurley, after that season, says, yep, I learned my lesson. And here comes B.J. Freeman 3-4 years later. And we know that even some of the stuff that he did was, not only on the court, but in the locker room, but also even off the court with that gambling scandal. So it's just a damn shame, ultimately, that you have a coach that sees the mistakes that he makes. He tells you publicly, and I'm sure he's told privately, that, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to do things different, and it's wash, rinse, repeat. So that's really, I think, just the frustrating part if you're really a big Bobby Hurley fan and you want him here to stay at ASU, for more than 11 years and wondering, okay, well, what went wrong? And I just think, saying that you learn from mistakes, but actually not showing that you learn from mistakes, I think ultimately that's why Bobby Hurley's not the coach at ASU anymore.
Right, so there's been a lot of great discussion in the huddle at devilsdigest.com. Mm-hmm. So, it doesn't necessarily want to, pull back the curtain so much, but a lot of speculation, a lot of names that are being fluttered out there, in terms of who the next guy is going to be. Some established names, mm-hmm. some young up-and-comers, we'll say. Yeah. What kind of the direction do you expect this program to take? Is there kind of an approximate timeline at this point as to who's Hurley's successor when they should be in place?
You see, ironically, earlier today, a list came up that showed all the operating budgets of men's basketball programs, I think, throughout Division I. But definitely did cover the Big 12. And ASU's operating budget was just over $10 million. It wasn't next to last. It was 2 from last place, at least according to that list. So to get a coach that has a buyout, and some of the guys are looking at, whether it's Eric Owen from New Mexico or Randy Bennett from St. Mary's, have $2 million, $2.6 million in Bennett's case, and you just can't see 20% of that operating budget going to a buyout, and then paying a coach like that the $3.5 million approximately that Bobby Hurley got. Those are just numbers that are just not in ASU's budget to really do. So I think we're going to see out of the box hire. I'm not going to peel the whole curtain because I talked a lot about NBA guys in the huddle that I didn't see anywhere published yet. But what's already been out there, and something that I reported before it was out there, about former point guard Derek Glasser, who is assistant coach right now with UC Santa Barbara. And people are saying, okay, Derek Glasser, obviously one of the best point guards we've seen this century in Tempe, but what else is the hook over here, so to speak? And as people know, Derek Glasser not only played with James Harden at ASU, he also played with them back in high school in Southern California. And James Harden reportedly is willing to throw his weight in terms of NIL, in terms of leveraging business connections, in terms of bringing maybe new donors to the program, maybe having existing donors really up the donation level to really have that with one big package with Derek Glasser. And look, I mean, I'm not breaking news up here when I'm saying ASU basketball is hurting for NIL. It's just amazing that they got players like Masampa Diop and Mo Odom for pretty much a wholesale discount compared to really what they could have made with other teams. But that's not going to be the case when you have a head coaching change. You have to make a splash in NIL. You're obviously going to go heavy into the transfer portal, really no different than Bobby Hurley did this past season. So you just have to have those dollars and cents behind you. So that's why a guy like Derek Glasser, I'm not here to say he's a clubhouse leader, but I don't think anybody should be surprised if he were to be the coach because he can bring a good amount of NIL. And with all due respect to guys like Olin, like Randy Bennett and others, maybe they do definitely have a better resume than a Derek Glasser, but are they going to bring the NIL? And now the onus is more on the athletic department to bring in the NIL, and that's really going to be a huge question mark. There is one NBA guy, which again I didn't see mentioned anywhere but the huddle, so I won't mention his name, but another guy that has James Harden connections, that if you see him get hired, you'll understand why that specific person did get hired. So really just any coach that can bring a really good level of NIL, again, is not the shoo-in to be the next head coach at ASU, but if one of those guys were to be hired, I think it would just make sense just from the financial standpoint.
All right, let's talk football. Gentlemen, spring football opens up this Thursday, 15 practices, of course. a pro day in the middle there, which would be nice change of pace there, as we have a year in which there should be several Sun Devils being drafted as well. But let's do our annual positional rundown. Let's start off, of course, at quarterback. That's the intrigue after no such drama last year in terms of Sam Levitt coming back after leading the team to a Big 12 title. A lot of questions at the quarterback spot. Cutter Boley, Mikey Keene, headline kind of the newcomers, true freshman. Jake Fetty's joining as well. Redshirt freshman Cam Dyer, the lone returner. Jordan, what are you looking forward to with this quarterback battle? And obviously with Cutter Boley being the first transfer portal addition, and obviously with his skill set and his upside, what he's able to do at Kentucky in the SEC, do you think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that it's Cutter's job to lose?
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think there's going to be a pretty healthy competition, but it is telling that when the transfer portal opened up, Cutter Boley was one of the first guys to come to Tempe. I think that speaks to what the coaching staff thinks of this guy and this skill set. I think it was really wise to bring in a guy like Mikey Keene because Cutter Boley has, about 8 games to his name at the college level? After that, 0 college snaps in this quarterback room. Mikey Keene has been through it all. He's been a starter. He's won competitions. He's lost competitions. He's been at a bunch of different conferences. He's a local guy. He knows what this is like. He beat Arizona State once already in his career. So even if he isn't playing necessarily, which I think this is going to be a healthy competition going into all the way into fall camp, he just brings so much that he can share with that quarterback room. But in terms of Cutter, you see what he can do, and yes, there's certainly some things to polish up, but you look at who the head coach is, who the offensive coordinator is, the offensive staff that can come around him, and then another year of experience for him. I think that there's a lot of intrigue here in this room. And then don't count out Jake Fetty, what he could do necessarily. Maybe not in the immediate, but I'm interested in seeing what that growth looks like over the next couple months.
Yeah, those young gunslingers are really fascinating. Cam Dyer is, unfortunately suffered the injury, but came back, was QB2 to end the year. Fetty, obviously the blue chip recruit, but Joe, what are you thinking about when you see this? We've had a lot of discussions over the last several weeks and months about some of the red flags in Boley's game. He's got the physical tools, no doubt, but some turnovers and some risk taking that go along with that.
Yeah, he's made 15 college appearances, 11 interceptions, in at least one interception in 11 of those games, and he has 5 of those 11 games were multiple interceptions. So that really just seems like the very obvious thing that needs to be limited this spring, and could be, if something's going to play him out of the race or take his starting position and put it into jeopardy, you got to imagine that's going to be the thing. We often go back to that quarterback controversy of 2012 and Todd Graham's first season, and how Taylor Kelly went from 3rd to 1st in a matter of a few months after the spring. And I believe that shuffle, a lot of it had to do with ball control and his ability to do so. So if that's something that I would imagine there's going to be a leash. It's not like, hey, you throw one pick and sorry, man, you're down to 3rd or 4th on the roster. But you get the feel it'll probably be that 2-man race. But yeah, I'm not counting Mikey Keene out of it, as you're talking about. He has been around. He is a very qualified quarterback. Even though he didn't take any snaps at Michigan, he has still got quite a resume, and that's something that they could put together because it's a really important year coming up. And though it's one that has a lot of changes and a lot of new players and a lot of new starters, I don't think it can be viewed as like a total rebuild because this fan base is at the point with this staff that they expect them to win. So making that decision is going to be, a really, really important thing. So I think that's going to be what a lot of folks who are going to either be watching practices or reading the reports or watching stuff on social media that y'all are going to be doing during the spring. Cutter Boley and his ability to take care of the ball, I'm sure is going to be at the very top of what they're interested in seeing.
What are you going to be tracking? Like how intense do you consider this competition? Of course, we're 6 months away from the first meaningful snap. So how impactful do you think these next 15 sessions are going to be in this race?
Yeah, I think that if people are looking, the comparison of Sam Levitt and Jeff Sims and how much did Jeff Sims push Sam Levitt, I think Mikey Keene is definitely going to push Cutter Boley more than Sims did push Sam Levitt, especially this past season. And it really is, I think, just a win-win situation because either, you get a young quarterback in Cutter Boley who does have experience playing in the SEC, definitely does have more advantages than disadvantages. And everybody's going to turn to the interception number. And when I did my exclusive interview with Marcus Arroyo, the offensive coordinator, he didn't make excuses for Cutter Boley and said that we should just forget about that he ever threw an interception in his career. But he said, a lot of those interceptions were really something you would, quote unquote, label them as desperation throws, Hail Mary, third and forever, and you're trying to make a play. You do have to really just take those sometimes into account, and also take the fact that maybe the head coach and the offensive coordinator at the time at Kentucky are just not at the level of Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo, who have obviously a very proven track record with quarterbacks. And, we talk about, Kenny Dillingham getting Sam Leavitt out of anonymity at Michigan State. And Cutter Boley is obviously coming with a much richer body of work compared to Leavitt when he first arrived at Arizona State. But Mikey Keene is just an absolute grizzled veteran, had success at UCF, had success at Fresno State. Unfortunately, ASU fans knew how much success he had at Fresno State. That 29-0 game, that was rough. But I think Mikey Keene is definitely a guy that can push Cutter Boley and really push him quite a bit. And I know that fairly or not, fans were cringing anytime Jeff Sims would get into the game, even though I think towards the end of the year he'd really had more good games and bad games. And I think the Sun Bowl, I'm not going to say it was his coming out party at ASU, but at least it was nice to see his last game ever as a Sun Devil to play as well as he did. But I think the quarterback situation, really, if you're comparing Leavitt Sims last year to Boley Keene this year, I think I like this situation better. And like I said, and Jake Feedy, he's like the X factor. He's like, the dark horse in all this. I mean, no, I don't think he's going to win the starting position, but can he somehow be the backup quarterback when fall camp breaks? I mean, I don't think you can really rule it out entirely, because that guy has one heck of an impressive high school tape. Obviously, was part of the Elite 11, so that's one guy that you really be on the lookout for.
Yeah, so it should be an intriguing next 5 weeks or so as we track this battle once they get underway. Let's talk some running backs. I'm not ready to get fooled again by the whole this is going to be a work share under Sean Aguano. I've been fooled too many times.
How does he keep doing that?
It's like this is going to be the year of the tight end, like that we heard a decade or so ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, the returners are headlined by a trio of experienced guys: Kyson Brown, Jason Brown. Had the breakout in the Sun Bowl, as well as Man Robinson as well. But a trio of new backs are really going to throw a curveball into this group with freshman Carde Mack, a couple of FCS transfers, and David Avett and Marquise Gillis. Guys, what are you looking for in this backfield? Obviously, the quarterback position is going to get the lion's share of the spotlight attention, but I think this is a low-key fascinating battle.
Yeah, this is one for me that I'm just trying to wrap my head around it and really eager to see it unfold, because you get Kyson Brown back, who, of course, as folks know, is supposed to be that top running back, supposed to be next in line for that 1,000-yard season that Sean Aguano just pumps out with regularity. Wasn't the case because of injuries, but despite him returning, you bring in those three running backs, two of which are FCS transfers, each of which I believe only has 1 year of eligibility. So you're bringing them into play now. And so that's what has me really curious, because as we've seen, again, we know better than to think it's going to be some equal division among the group or anything like that. So I don't know if that philosophy is going to change. I don't know really what to make of this. And then, guys like the Jason Browns of the world, the Man Robinsons, the ones who were getting time at the end of last year. And I'm just a big Jason Brown fan. I think in just about every rep he's shown, he's done something, for the most part positive. Obviously, there are some small things they'd like to take back, but how this group shakes out will be very interesting. I think they all bring, different things here and there to the table, what they can provide to this offense. But you've got more than a half dozen scholarship guys there, all of which have game experience, some of which have very limited time. So a lot of urgency in this group.
What are you looking for, Jordan?
Kyson Brown's bounce back. I think a lot of people wrote him off this offseason as there were new additions coming in. If we remember to fall camp, there weren't many days where he was not the best running back on that field. And if he wasn't on that given day, the next day he was. Raleek Brown kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but it was, for the people that were there a lot, it was pretty obvious who the best running back was throughout that entire camp. And he had a great game 1 and then just could never really quite get right health-wise. And but he is the picture of what you want as a student athlete in ASU. He continues to get better. He just needs the reps. But there are going to be a lot of guys here pushing him, both returners and newcomers. And like Joe mentioned, some guys that don't have a ton of time left in college. So there is going to be an urgency there. But I'm not ready to, just forget about Kyson, because I think he really is the quiet leader of that group as it continues to evolve under Sean Aguano.
Yeah, Sip, I think he just, came in a little unheralded as a recruit. He just put in the work and continued to time, as years went by, climb up that depth chart, got his chance, shined when he could. I think he still has a great blend of speed and power. But yeah, I think
can catch out of the backfield.
Yeah, great out of the backfield as well. But it's going to be really interesting to see how somebody like that come. Because this whole last couple of years really has been defined for ASU, kind of like the underdog, chip on the shoulder mentality, and now you're having so many new faces. A lot of that hype is going to those newcomers, and a couple that we'll get to it, some pretty notable ones. But I've always been high on Kyson. You mentioned that just on and off the field. Remember the Barrett Honors College as well. It's just going to be really interesting to see how he factors in with some of the young bucks there and some of the newcomers.
I'm not saying this is going to be running back by committee, because fooled me once, fooled me twice, fooled me a million times.
10 times. Yeah.
But if I had to make my projection right here, right now, as far as who the top 3 running backs are going to be in terms of carry allocation, I would say Kyson Brown, Jason Brown, because it's still a curious case how that guy was the forgotten man and then some all season long. And, okay, here's a Sun Bowl. I guess we got to play you. Nobody else is available. And Jason Brown played really well. And look, I know you can put the Sun Bowl in its own perspective, quasi-exhibition game. Duke did not have a good defense at all. He just didn't have a good offense, but that's another story. But Jason Brown did play well in that game for the most part. And Marquise Gillis, he is really, really intriguing to me. You can see, dare I say, some of those Cam Scatterboo parallels in terms of a guy coming, just in terms of the background, just in terms of the story.
It's a tremendous story.
Yeah. Obviously talent, that is TBD big time, and let's not be disappointed if he doesn't get to the Cam Scatterboo level. But, the fact that his running backs coach was Clayton Portis, the former University of Miami and NFL running back, and I talked to him after Gillis committed, and he had nothing but glowing reviews about him, not only as a running back, but really as a person. So I think that's one newcomer I'm definitely going to have my eye on. But I agree. I'm not discounting Kyson Brown at all. And I think Jason Brown, even though a very small body of work, just having that Sun Bowl to really show what he can do. But I still think ultimately that can be something that in terms of momentum carrying into spring practice, I think that's something that can really work in his favor. David Abbott, I think, is going to be that short yardage running back that ASU really hasn't had for a while in terms of just the man for special missions. And just like we talked about Jake Feedy at quarterback, a true freshman that really, really ignites the imagination in terms of potential. Carday Mack at running back. He's another guy that I really would keep an eye on him, see if he can maybe somehow snake his way into the rotation over there. He's somebody like Jake Feedy that was able to get in some bowl practices, even more than Jake did, actually. So again, maybe that might seem really trivial to some people, but just really get your feet wet as much as you can as a true freshman. I think maybe that's something that really shows in spring practice, because unlike pretty much the rest of the 2026 recruiting class, including some junior college transfers, Carday Mack, a little more familiar with how practice goes and everything, and just to really smooth that learning curve to some extent when spring practice starts, may have us be treated to some Mac attack highlights early in spring.
So with this position group, and there are going to be several others as well that fall under this category, but this is one where I think it's important and intriguing to remind ourselves that the fact that there is no post-spring transfer portal window for folks to use. Yeah. If you look at this position group a year ago, you'd say there's absolutely no way all of these guys are going to be on the roster still in the fall. They're going to duke it out in the spring, and you're going to lose probably a couple of them. With that not being the case, I mean, that ramps up that urgency that we were talking about. And those guys who only have that 1 year left, they can't say, ooh, you know what, I came to this school, I only got 1 year left. This is not what I thought it was, so I'm just going to do an about face. Yeah. They are essentially locked into things. And so I think that can only help the competition.
Yeah, and seeing Mac up close during the bowl practices, definite, Demario Richard vibes.
Yeah, totally.
Like that back. We'll see exactly. I mean, that's, top 5 all-time rusher in school history, so I don't want to necessarily saddle the kid with too much baggage at this point, but definitely that profile, obviously coming in as a 4-star, so it definitely has some upside. But we'll see it. A very fascinating battle. Wide receiver, gentlemen. ASU, of course, lands 2 of the premier portal targets in Omarion Miller, Reed Harris. Those figure to be plug-and-play starters, some of the best in the country. Then it gets the slot position. That's when I think there and how the rest of that group fills out. A group that has been kind of largely underwhelming in the last couple of years, outside of a spot here and there behind Jordan Tyson as he goes off to hopefully the 21st pick overall next month. Jordan, how do you see this wide receiver group for guys that are not named Harris or Miller?
Yeah, again, I think you can't forget about Jalen Moss when he was finally healthy. The back half of the season, the bowl game that he had, he showed that productivity that happened at Fresno State in the back half of the year, and that was with Jeff Sims, and that was with a lot of guys in and out of that lineup. But then you look at it, Raiden Vines-Bright, another young guy, I think is definitely going to push for playing time. Another a guy coming back to Tempe, and a really highly touted guy that played a decent amount at Washington in his first year. Corey Butler is another guy that in practice just kind of showed what he could do, and a very intellectual guy, and you can tell just the way he tries to manipulate routes and things like that. So you have those 2 really high-profile guys coming in to help lead the charge. I feel like this wide receiver room is much more even across the board than what we've seen the past couple of years, where it's Jordan Tyson and you have some dudes, but they're going to kind of fight it out. And I feel like the I don't want to say the floor, but the standard as a whole has been raised in Hines Ward's room.
And that's exactly what I've been thinking. And one thing, let's not forget, weirdly enough, the only returning player from last year for Arizona State who received any measure of all Big 12 accolades, it's Derek Eusebio.
Yeah.
Honorable mention, which is kind of wild to think of, but what you're saying is exactly what's in my mind. This is going to be a comparison that I'm sure a lot of listeners and viewers aren't going to love because of the school that it's compared to. But when we preview the Territorial Cup game, we're talking to our good friend Adam Green. How in the world is this past game for Arizona better after you lose your superstar wide receiver to the NFL, who went on to have a superstar rookie season? And he was talking about how the position group as a whole is better. Now, they have some other variables with new offensive coordinator, things like that, but it's basically the quantity with quality, but not just that number 1 guy, not that lottery pick that's the legendary player and earning all those awards so that all the defenses can focus completely on him. Now then, we can't understate how important it is to get Miller and Harris, and these are 2, I believe, of the top 4 or 5 wide receiver transfer portal prospects that were even out there. But yeah, I'm really, I don't know if it's cautious optimism or just optimism, but I'm excited about this group. And I don't know if these guys are going to make any noise, but you got some familiar names in new places. You got Plaz Johnson, who's moving from the secondary to wide receiver. And I know you know this way more than me, but he was a really productive receiver in high school. You got Butter Tollefson, who is an athletic guy. Again, these could be ones that are really having a difficult time working their way up the depth chart, but at least just some new names and a lot of guys from the class of 2025 that I think pretty much all of them redshirted. So you've got some new names, you got some talent, you got 3 really good transfers, because as much as folks talk about Miller and Harrison for good reason, I just think Vines-Bright is somebody that could really come in and contribute as well, and Jalen Moss ended the season on such a high note as well. So a lot more optimism, a lot more excitement compared to last year, where it just felt like it took so long to get anybody involved. Like maybe that Baylor game with Eusebio was the first time it felt like somebody else was contributing. And you had these little spurts here and there, like Jaron Hamilton had that random 100-yard game against Texas Tech, and things like that. So this is a position group that I'm expecting to improve quite a bit as a unit this season.
Yeah, Hamilton is so interesting to me just because he just day in, day out in fall camp especially, he seemed to just torch what turned out to be a really good Sun Devil defense.
Right.
And then on game day, outside of that, like Texas Tech, he had a couple 40-yarders, I believe, in that game. It was kind of a non-factor. Had some crucial drops and some missed opportunities, but maybe another year under Hines Ward and comfort in the system. I think there was some read between the lines from the coaching staff of just like maybe he needs to kind of just put the mental side of the game into the his all-world speed. So we'll see exactly how that pans out there. So, I mean, how excited are you about this group, or how would you kind of compare it now that you kind of go from superstar and supporting cast to perhaps some more balance in 26?
No, I agree with Joe. I mean, there's definitely a good reason to be bullish about this group as a whole. I know many schools at all throughout the transfer portal did as well as ASU did when it came to landing wide receivers out of the portal. So definitely a great job by the coaching staff there. I think Vines Bright and Jalen Moss duking it out for the slot position. That might be the most heated battle in spring practice, and probably spills over to fall camp at this point. And to get a guy like Hamilton, maybe now less pressure because he is coming off the bench, and maybe he just got that rough year out of his system, and now can really contribute that much more as a reserve. That's really, I think, welcome news. Derek Eusebio, I think is some way somehow is going to find his way into the rotation, and then a guy like Corey Butler, who I think actually might play a really big part as a punt returner on special teams. But if he does well as a punt returner, can that really translate that confidence right now to also be a wide receiver that some way somehow is able to find his way into the rotation? But I think that overall there's a lot to be excited about this wide receiver group. It's not like it was last year, Jordan Tyson and just a bunch of dudes that might flash here or flash there. And about Derek Eusebio, and my subscribers know that I've been blue in the face talking about this. When Jalen Moss went down early in the season, first it was an injury, then it was an illness, and the ASU staff, a moment that would love to have back is just go almost exclusively to tight end set, and not giving Derek Eusebio the chance to be that every Saturday starting wide receiver. I think that is something that did hurt ASU quite a bit, even though Jordan Tyson had obviously incredible numbers, but we all know about Sam Levitt being laser focused in a bad way on Jordan Tyson game in and game out. And that, I think, kind of robbed, Derek Eusebio from even having a better year. And now the competition is really that much stiffer. But I think Derek Eusebio is a guy that comes in into 2026 with a lot of confidence. But I think maybe now we're going to see the wide receiver group that maybe we should have seen last year if Jalen Moss doesn't have the issues, if they don't go to that two tight end almost exclusively the entire year. Maybe now we can see what this wide receiver group can do, and see what that Hines Ward magic.
Yeah, I mean, because that kind of leads perfectly into the next position group, talking about the tight ends. Like, so much 12 personnel last year. And, it seemed like eventually they kind of realized they had a little bit more depth. But, yeah, for a while there, just several weeks, I think ASU was among the nation's leaders in terms of 12 personnel usage. Now you look at the tight end positions here heading into 26. Chamon Metayer is, hopefully NFL bound, after his eligibility is up. But you got a senior in Kamari Anderson who, again, kind of one of those camp wonders that you really kind of never really translated on game day. But A.J. Ia, the rising sophomore, a guy that we were all super excited about, or at least when he got in, just had a single catch as a true freshman, some learning moments in some freshmen. But with Jason Mons at the helm of that group, and you had a couple of very talented true freshmen, some portal additions as well. I think the tight end group, it's going to be very interesting to exactly see is Ia ready to make that jump and be the dude? Or is it going to be something that maybe he needs a little bit more time in the incubator, and maybe a guy like Kamari Anderson, a former 4-star in his own right, maybe that Kentucky connection with Cutter Boley, pays off eventually. But we'll see. I think that this is kind of another very interesting position group to look at.
Yeah, I feel like I have confidence that someone will emerge. I don't feel like this position is going to plummet down to the nothingness that it was not too terribly long ago. I mean, we were pretty spoiled with Chamon Metayer in how he performed, and even a guy like Cam Harple. He had a solid year and improved quite a bit from 2024 to last season. So, yeah, those two names at the top, counting on them to perform. Going to be interesting to watch in the spring. A.J. Ia, I think, is another one of those guys because, man, just from the outside looking in, very, very impressive. Just the physical characteristics and everything we heard and saw from him, especially in the preseason Camp T and all that good stuff. So again, you're going to put your trust in the coaching staff that they'll get it right, and we'll see how these newcomers can contribute. Christian Ingman that they got from the FCS level, he's an honorable mention all-conference performer for Portland State. Anthony Miller maybe more of that line blocking tight end, but they've replenished the group. They've gotten a couple solid freshmen. Only one's going to be available for the spring. So you feel good enough that they've got the pieces in place, though there's a pretty big paradigm shift from what they were using the last couple of years, that they are prepared to replace those players.
I think last year's tight end usage was such a necessity that this will now be a luxury. If you have 2 tight ends out there, AJ Ia can go out in the slot. Yeah. He did that predominantly in high school, and that was a big transition for him to work that in line. He now has a year under his belt learning that from Jason Mons. And I think Kamari, you saw him pop when he would get his opportunities, but you have 2 seniors ahead of you. So, again, we're going to talk a lot about the O-line here in a little bit. There's a lot of turnover. You're replacing 2 tackles. I think the blocking is going to be just as important. So maybe that's a way where maybe the not necessarily a stat filler is fine in the field a lot, but a guy that's really important to this equation. Maybe it's an Anthony Miller. Maybe it's one of these other guys that are assisting in the blocking. But you like the versatility because there's whatever the situation is, it's not, that doesn't fit that one guy's skill set, so I guess we're just going to throw him out here and hope for the best. You can really mix and match a lot with this tight end room.
Who's got you excited at tight end?
I mean, I would say Kamari Anderson got me excited because I feel that he is just so much better than what we've seen last year. He had an outstanding fall camp, I thought, and I think the ascension of Cameron Harpel really hurt Kamari Anderson more than hurt anybody else in that tight end group, and it just really took him a while, to get into the groove of things. Another guy that had a nice showing in the Sun Bowl. So again, can that be the linchpin to have a solid spring? We'll see. But he's basically going to be counted on, obviously, much more than he was last season. AGE, 6'6", 260 pounds. I mean, you just feel like you just got to succeed when you got that frame. But he is only a sophomore, so I think fans should be excited about him, but also still exercise some patience because he didn't play obviously all that much last year. And now just really having his snaps triple or quadruple each and every practice, that's something that he's going to have to show that he can handle quite well. But, the potential of a guy like AGE is just really, limitless at this point. I think Anthony Miller coming in from Tulsa, I think that was a good pickup, from the transfer portal. Christian Ingham, come from an FCS level. I don't know really just, a whole lot more to expect. I think maybe Miller is somebody that's going to see, more playing time when it's all said and done. Then you got the 2 freshmen, Landon Meary, who is already here. Hayden Vircher is only going to be here in the summer. I'm curious to see how they can serve as a foundation of this group. But I think, there are definitely very, very talented freshmen, both Meary and Vircher. Maybe almost as talented as Ia was coming out of high school. So, this is a position where, I'm maybe a little more excited for the future, 27 and beyond, than I am right now. But, hopefully the way Kamari Anderson and AG play this year can really change my mind. But I think overall, if it's a tight end group that you're really not going to put too much pressure on, I think they're going to be fine because I just, really don't see a Chamon Metayer-like tight end over here that you can just target in the red zone time and time again and really have him put up some good, if not great, numbers.
All right, it all starts in the trenches. This is all these dynamic playmakers aren't going to matter much if the offensive line doesn't get the job done. This is going to be a complete rebuild, pretty much from this time last year. A lot of very talented players and a good mix. Some younger guys that have been in the system for a while. Like a Champ Westbrook, some newcomers, some JUCO guys. Mm-hmm. This could be a situation where you have like all five jobs on the line. One of the best battles. Saga Tuatele is going to have his hands full trying to navigate all the players here. But Jordan, when you look at this offensive line, all the guys coming back, the host of newcomers as well, where are you starting first? This is obviously such a key component of a football team, but man, there's just like so much uncertainty here.
Totally. And I think you have to start with the tackles, try to start to figure that out a little bit. I think all the injuries from last year will be a little bit of a blessing in disguise this year, where some guys who probably weren't necessarily, if everything went according to plan last year, they probably weren't fine in the field. Now they are, especially on that interior. There was a lot of trial by fire that I think helped jumpstart some development for some of these guys. But I'm really intrigued, Jermaine Mitchell, when you look at what his resume is, they flipped him from Georgia. That says something, talent-wise, and that sort of thing. And then, like you said, Champ Westbrook's another guy who has just trusted the process, has talked time and time again of, hey, I'm not looking elsewhere. I want to be here. I want to play here. Seems to be doing everything right. You can see his physical maturation over the years. Is this his time? We'll have to see what the next couple months look like. But yeah, there is going to be a lot of mixing and matching and trying to figure that out. And I'm sure in fall camp, there'll be certain days that one guy's playing left tackle, the next day he's playing right tackle. Maybe he's playing guard. Maybe they're really embracing it. But as I look at this group too, you start to look at the size, and you can see the identity of what Saga has wanted to recruit the past couple of years, and it's finally kind of coming to fruition, where you see a bunch of guys who are 6'7", 6'8", 6'7", 6'8", so a lot of really good size up front.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Mekhi Stewart, getting that playing time that you mentioned, like that. As a true freshman, you don't often see that, and that's obviously not an ideal situation, but I think he acquitted himself well, and I think he's firmly in that mix as well. Some other guys, the versatility that you can move around a little bit, to have that option to play inside, outside, and have that versatility, and the size, it really jumps out. Like Rob Lapuaho, like. Just seeing that dude up front, that's a massive human being, and he's not even the biggest dude in that group. And like that's a guy that could, I think, and we talked about him on the breakout episode last week, Joe. Just like he was on my list because I think that he could be a guy that could jump in. This is a very interesting group of O-linemen.
Yeah, and just to put some numbers on the work that ASU is going to have to do this spring. So all told, in 2025, ASU had 10 different players start on the offensive line. 5 of those players return. However, the 5 that depart accounted for 51 of the 65 total offensive line starts. That's a little bit under 80% of the starts that are gone from last year. And on top of that, there are only 2 players that return who had more than 2 starts. And I'm going to pose a trivia question. Can anyone here name the offensive lineman with the most returning starts from 2025?
Wade Helton?
It's Wade Helton with 6. And that's one of those guys, like you're talking about, Jordan, that at the beginning of the season probably weren't thinking that he was going to factor too heavily into the race. Injuries to Ben Coleman and others really put that in there. But, yeah, he had the 6 starts. Mekhi Stewart had 4. Makuapule had 2. And then you had Clem and Westbrooks both getting a start in the bowl game there. So a few guys with a very little bit of starting experience. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. If things would have worked out perfectly last year, then you're probably having even less starting experience coming into this season. So, again, weird blessing in disguise, like you mentioned. I'm really eager to see also those battles at offensive tackle. I don't know if it's going to be as simple as Jermaine Mitchell against Jalen Clem for the left tackle, and then Champ Westbrooks and Luke Beklenko is coming in from Oklahoma, previously started at Stanford. If those are 2 pairs that you might see battling it out on those tackle positions, I feel like between the transfer portal and JUCO, this has been like the biggest JUCO class I think ASU's had in quite a bit of time. And they've gotten a few guys that are among the very top in terms of JUCO All-Americans and things like that on the offensive line. So they've equipped themselves pretty well there. And then the interior line, they're going to be a few guys battling for there are fewer spots than there are guys. So a lot of names. That's another thing I was looking at. Man, when I was doing my research for the preview I wrote for Hoda, I'm like, there are a lot. I think there's like 20 offensive linemen. And I know there's bigger rosters and things like that than there used to be. But I remember days when you could barely put together a 2 deep worth of scholarship caliber guys. So those days are gone. Things are very different now.
How are you handicapping like all these races? Because it's very interesting. Because even like after Wade Helton did get the kind of finish the year as the center, but then like all of a sudden they bring in a guy from Georgia Tech, and now is Wade Helton better suited as maybe that swing guy because he can play like multiple positions. Like as we start off the spring ball, how are you looking at these different races?
Yeah, you stole my thunder there, Brad, for a second. Not that I disagree with Jordy that it does start with the tackles, but to me, the center position just had to be solidified. And I did like Wade Helton. I mean, my subscribers know how much I thought that back in Campton, Arizona. Remember, Wade Helton starts at center for a whole week, and then, now we're going to put Ben Coleman back in. It was like a weird move, which maybe if the coaches could do it all over again, maybe they don't do that and just keep Ben Coleman at left guard when the guy was a stud, and Wade Helton keep him at center. Tana Alo Tupoloa from Georgia Tech. And anybody knows just a little about college football in 2025, one thing Georgia Tech could do is run the heck out of the ball. And this was the starting center for the Yellow Jackets. For ASU to bring him on, maybe not so much under the radar, that is probably one of the best transfer portal additions that they have. So just to have Wade Helton, battle that guy, and if Wade Helton is your backup center, trust me, you can do a whole lot worse than that. So I think that was definitely a very, very impressive, pickup. I mean, not really much to add. Because I think Jordy and Joe, covered it quite a bit well. But I just feel that maybe Makai Stewart is probably maybe the only sure starter. When you look at spring practice, that might start when the season does begin. Because I don't know if there's going to be that much competition for him. I mean, sure, he played because there were injuries, and also players not really playing up to their abilities. But you just got to give Sagatu Tele a lot of credit. I was able to develop young players like Makai Stewart, like Wade Helton, and I think that this offensive line has added a lot of quality depth and is deeper than it was last year. And I'll just be shocked to see any of the newcomers really not playing up to their abilities, because this is a very, very, very deep, very, very talented group. And again, I think what they've done at center specifically, that's what really caught my eye. And if we're going to see an improved offense, improved running game, we're definitely going to point to Tana as the straw that stirs the drink over here with the front five.
All right, let's switch over to the defense and the D-line, which, as of my notes here, had 19 players in total. Should make that 20, like the offensive line, because there was a little surprise recently of a guy getting another year. And so, as we talked about it coming off of last year, the defensive line is going to look a whole lot different. You're going to lose all your edges. You potentially could lose C.J. Fight to the NFL draft. You're losing Kangaika. But now all of a sudden you have C.J. Fight coming back for one last ride, and Clayton Smith, a familiar face along those edge groups. But still, there's still going to be a lot of new faces there, whether they're returning guys stepping into bigger roles or some of the newcomers, especially those couple of transfer portal guys coming in that are going to need to play a bigger role, because this is a defense that played really well last year. It all started up front. The pass rush didn't have necessarily a dominant dude to get out there and put 8-9 sacks on the board, but I think collectively was pretty fierce and consistent in applying pressure. But I think that is going to be one of the big question marks. I mean, quarterback's going to get a lot of run, but I think who's going to impact the quarterback on the other side of the ball is going to be a crucial element in spring. All right,
you got to spill the beans. So I was really caught off guard in a positive way about Clayton Smith, that news of him returning. Like we talked about on recent stuff we've done, in a lot of other cases, we kind of know. Like Zyrus Fiase, okay, we knew that he was going through that process. Or like when Shamari Simmons got that appeal denied, we knew he was going through that process. When that news dropped on Clayton Smith, I'm like, well, that is a nice little thing. I think it was a solid Friday news dump. Did you know, was that in the works, or were you as shocked as anybody?
No, honestly, I really did not know. I think that when it comes to cases like this, the team really tries to keep it under wraps as much as they can, not even talk to anybody off the record, not to stir the emotions up with the NCAA appeal committee, so they won't go in a different direction. But, Joe, you better recognize, Clayton Smith is an athlete. He's not listed as a defensive lineman.
That's true.
On the roster.
That's true.
So can we see Clayton Smith in a fade, down the goal line?
I mean, they got another defensive lineman that I think is up for that too. I mean, you got to give Blaze and Lono one. They got to those two got to be. They got to go in competition this spring to see who gets to be the gadget defensive guy on offense and special teams.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, obviously, a very, very pleasant surprise. And I think 25 was an okay year for Clayton Smith. I think he could have done better. Obviously you can't have a guy like Justin Watley just play gangbusters pretty much the whole year, and for Clayton Smith to still play at a high level. So maybe that took away some of his shine. Obviously Prince Dorba had a good stretch over there too. But Clayton Smith has quite the battle against two excellent defensive ends that ASU added out of the portal. And may I add, they added them really late into the portal. I mean, there were a lot of anxious fans like, Hode, what's going on with defensive ends? We're going to defensive ends. We lost the whole 2 deep. What's going on? And Marion Winston and Jalen Thompson. I mean, I almost equate that haul quality-wise to the wide receiver hole that ASU had. I mean, those are 2 quality defensive ends. And if you have Clayton Smith, coming off the bench, which is not, far-fetched, that really starts to put in perspective that you didn't lose a whole lot from an excellent 2025 group at defensive end. And obviously, you got the anchor C.J. Fight coming back. Impossible to overstate how important that's going to be. I think that here in the interior, I'm curious to see how Zach Swanson is able to recover from his foot injury last year. It happened last spring practice, if people remember, and he just never got healthy ever since. And Zach Swanson, I think, is one player that maybe people don't know how important he is to that interior line. If people remember that win against Utah at home, I mean, the guy was just unbelievable. I mean, one of the best defensive lineman performances that I've seen in Tempe in a long, long time. You brought, Jeffrey Mounds from the junior college ranks. Mikhail Gardner, if he can get over his injury issues, I think he's somebody that I would look forward to be in the rotation. And Blazin Lona Wong, that seems to have been here since 2015 or something. He's still here, alive and kicking, and
he's a top Graham recruit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, aside from catching passes and trick plays, he can also play some good interior line. So, like I said, I'm really impressed with what they did on the edge. I think maybe just the interior to me. We know we can get with CJ Fight, but Swanson and some of the newcomers and a guy like Lona Wong, can they play and play well? That could really dictate a lot. Let's not forget this ASU defense under Brian Ward, even going back to that not so great 23 team, was really excellent almost each and every Saturday against the run. So I'm really curious to see how this interior of the defensive line can really rank itself, halting ground attacks of the opponents like they did the last few years.
So ASU, of course, signed, I believe, 3 junior college transfers for this cycle, 2 interior linemen and a defensive end.
Yes.
Do you see those guys being legitimate starting contenders starting with the spring? Do you think they're more depth players? It's a little kind of tough to grasp where these might fit in.
Yeah, I mean, with Jeffrey Mann's in the interior, I mean, yes, I think him and Swanson will definitely battle for a starting position in the interior. Kurt Vakalai, he's somebody I think with Clayton Smith could round out the 2 deep at defensive end. But if I look at also a guy like Albert Smith, I mean, somebody that I think has shown some flashes as a young player. And obviously when you talk about the interior, I don't want to forget about Ramar Williams, who I think also a returning player that showed some flashes in 2025. So I think that maybe Mans out of all the junior college players might have the best chance to start. But I think all the junior college players better be in the 2 deep, because to me a junior college player is just like a transfer portal guy. I mean, you don't bring them to be the 3rd, 4th player in the depth chart. You bring them to be at worst a 2 deep player. So I think by and large, everybody that they brought in, either from the junior college ranks or from the transfer portal, should be at worst in the 2 deep, if not starting.
Yeah, Vakalahi's an interesting case because, obviously coming over from Australia,
yep,
and, relatively new to the game, but the intangibles are kind of, or the measurables and the frame look good. So maybe he's more of a project, but, immediately best accent on the team. Just absolutely those dulcet tones there. But you mentioned Albert Smith. The hype train for me on Albert Smith, it's leaving the station. Like I think he is super exciting. So he's definitely one of those guys on the smaller side. And
yeah,
but I don't know if he's necessarily kind of like an every down guy you want out there. But in those sub packages, I think he could be really disruptive. And I'd like to you mentioned Ramar Williams, local guy. I think what he can do is going to be super exciting. But yeah, it's such intrigue there as well, because you have some of those younger guys growing into some bigger roles, but some more plug and play guys that you coming in, and then you get the kind of the cherry on top of whatever you get from Clayton Smith, which is like kind of a high ceiling or a high floor. We haven't
4
seen,
sacks.
Yeah,
I think each year he's been at ASU 3 years. I think it's either 4 or 4.5 sacks. I think it's 13 sacks in 3 years. Like, you can count on that. It's not going to be 8, not going to be 10, not going to be 1.
It's not the 5-star production that coming out of high school, but it's a good rotational piece. And I think that when you lose everybody else off that edge spot, I think that's a nice luxury to have a little.
I think that's also important, though. This room is so unique. If you go to a practice, they are talking so much crap to the offensive line. Yeah. They are talking so much crap to each other. And it was a really unique dynamic, but it was also like they're going to rag on each other, but it truly was we're rushing as one. And that they really adopted that mentality last year. I think it's important to have a Clayton Smith on this team that can verbalize that. CJ Fight's a great leader, but he's very much a lead by example guy. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to get more vocal, but we haven't seen him yet be the guy that will actively call people out. Clayton Smith will. And he's a guy that has done it and been playing at a very high level. So I think a lot of these newcomers and, Hode, you mentioned a few of these guys who already have a lot of decorated college careers. They're going to help a ton, but I think everyone's going to follow Clayton, at least when it comes to the edge side of things. And then Vakalahi, I love his story. I think a ton of potential there. Fascinated to see how he navigates this spring season and then going into fall camp.
And by the way, Brad, I just want to say, like, people on staff told me, watch out for true freshman Julian Hugo. He's already on campus, and
yeah.
I mean, obviously he has a lot of bodies in front of him at defensive end. But people that I know on staff are really excited to see what he can do. I believe he was a 4-star out of high school, so that's maybe somebody that could surprise some people. But again, a lot of talent at defensive end, which again, after the 25 season, we weren't sure how that group was going to materialize. And again, it's just crazy that you brought 2 studs in Winston and Thompson that late into the transfer portal. And those guys, trust me, they visited more than 1 or 2 Power 4 schools each before they made that last visit to ASU. So, I mean, props to that staff for closing hard.
I'm curious, it's some of the maybe lower depth chart guys. I know Brad's been high in Roman Petrie for a long time. Someone like a couple guys that came from the transfer portal or last year's signing classes, like a Rashad McKenzie, Joshua Shanklin. Again, names that we just haven't really heard much of in the last year. Talk about Michael Gardner, and I mean, it's crazy that I was doing the research before I wrote for you that the last college game he played in was Oregon's 2023 win in Tempe with Bo Nix, and when they ran up the score and then 6 touchdowns the first half.
Yeah.
So he's just had horrible injury luck. So will we see anything from names like that, or will they kind of stay in the, third string and below? Spring's a great opportunity for that. Again, it's just, man, wrapping my head around just the new age of college football with just so many names and bodies. Like, I remember in the past doing a spring preview, and if it would have been 20 deep, we're talking about guys that are never going to see the field, at the 18th, 19th, and 20th spots. So it's good to have just this crop of bodies to be able to do something with.
Well, bottom line, you got 105 scholarship players.
There you go.
I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it and say throw it on the wall and see what sticks. But ultimately, if you do have 15 players in a group that can only play 4 or 5 at a time, you just figure the cream is going to rise to the top. But now when you have 15 solid players, or maybe even 20 solid players, which the defensive lineman group is probably nearing, if not at. You just figure you can have not only a great 2 deep, but even a really solid third teamers if you need them in case of injury or something. So I mean you're going to have huge groups, and it's for a reason, and you just hope that really just materializes in having just a higher talent level.
Yeah, that depth. I mean, Dyron Reynolds loves to get a lot of guys involved, and so that ultimately in those third and fourth quarters, you can still throw waves of fresh defensive linemen at the opposing offense. And that's a great point that you brought up, Jordan, about the culture point of just having Clayton Smith, a guy who wore that Pat Tillman Leadership Council jacket to media day a year ago, and just a guy who's been here and just knows the standard, and so many new faces. And it's going to be a lot quieter without, Jacob Gangaika, Justin Watley, Prince Sorba chirping. But I think that, that if you have that piece that can, kind of maybe bridge that next generation Devils, that's going to be real fascinating to watch. Let's talk some linebackers. Now, of course, they play 2, and this is a situation where you have Jordan Crook and Keyshawn Elliott, 2 wildly productive players that are gone. But I think that that linebacker group, that werewolves, as AJ Cooper likes to call them, I think they're really poised to do some special things. Joe, let's start things off with Martell Hughes. I know like you're running the maybe president of that fan club there, and for good reason.
To the moon, man. If this group can play anywhere near their potential, I think that any perceived drop-off from last year is going to be much, much smaller than a lot of folks otherwise think it may be. And it's understandable to think there may be. Keyshawn Elliott had an incredible year. Jordan Crook had an incredible year. Those guys are moving on to the next level. Martell Hughes has just been a playmaker. I mean, for a guy who hasn't been a consistent starter, or even when he was a true freshman, I mean, he has made game-changing plays, whether it's a blocked punt, whether it's an interception. I mean, he just finds the ball, and he's put up good numbers in a reserve role. If he's like a full-time starter or like a top-end rotation guy, if he just gets a little bit of a bump in playing time from where he was, this is someone that I think with relative ease could be an all-Big 12 caliber performer. And obviously you get Cyrus Fiaseo back, who's a great rotation piece as well. And the X factor to me was when that awesome night, the transfer portal, the updates were just spinning nonstop, and you see that ASU just got the NCAA's leading tackler. Like, that was wild to me. So you throw Owen Long in the mix from Colorado State, who is just a wildly productive linebacker. And that top end is so intriguing to me, and that doesn't even count guys like maybe a Ramir Davis who comes in after an intriguing season at Northern Arizona, a guy who had some really legit scholarship offers out of high school. So this is, again, kind of similar to wide receiver, where if you look at it from the outside in and you don't necessarily do a ton of research on it, you might think, oh, man, they lost these guys. It's going to be tough for them to play at a high level this season compared to last year. If you do the research, you can be real excited about it. So, yeah, like Martell Hughes is my guy to just buy right now, because I think by this time next year, I mean, we could be talking about a guy who's left for the NFL draft.
And it's one of those things where it's like, this has been an obvious ascension. Yeah. Like, you talk to the Keyshawn Elliott's, the Jordan Crooks of the world, and they're all like, oh, yeah, he's next. He's the dude. And then every time, like you said, every time he would step on the field, his nose would be in the football. Somehow he'd be making an impact play. So it's been cool to see. We talk so much about the transfers and everything, but see a guy go through the prep recruiting process and work his way up, and you see his role expand. Like, I think that's an important thing for a team to also have.
Caleb McCullough vibes, maybe?
Yeah, 100%.
Door-to-door devil.
Yeah.
So I think he's obviously really interesting. I think you have a clear top three in terms of just, with Martell Hughes, Fiaseu being that veteran presence coming back for that last year, Owen Long. I think the real intrigue there is like who's going to round out that group. We talked about him last week, Isaiah Yusefa, the youngster out of Hawaii. Had a little bit of injury, but from the sense I get from talking to folks, real excitement behind him. But there's also some other intriguing names as well.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jordy. Ramir Davis, he's the first player to come to ASU from NAU, even before the transfer portal was ever a thing, right?
So there's a long snap. I don't know if
Tyler Wigglesworth.
Yeah, I don't know if that was it an actual one or was that a walk-on situation?
Okay, I think you're right.
But still, there's I like I love a good note. You know what I mean? Like I come from the media relations.
Sorry, Josh, I asked you and not Jordy. Sorry. I remember James Brooks back in the day was from Flagstaff, but never played at NAU before he got to ASU. Yeah, I mean, Owen Long, I see a lot of parallels between him and Keyshawn Elliott. I think that ASU fans are going to be really pleased to have that caliber of a linebacker. Can he go right into the huge shoes that Keyshawn Elliott has left behind? We'll see. But, to be the leader in tackles in all FBS schools last year, I mean, again, kudos for this coaching staff. I mean, they do an excellent job in the portal, and I think Owen Long, not under the radar at all, is definitely one of the crown jewels of this transfer portal class.
Just to interject, the fewest tackles he had in any one game last year was 7.
Slacker.
He had multiple games with 15, 17 tackles. I mean, this is just...
Yeah, he averaged a dozen tackles a game.
It's unreal.
It's Kyle Soley numbers.
Yeah. That's a great reference. It's a great reference. Staff is telling me again, if we look at true freshman Mason Martin from St. Louis. I mean, when was the last time ASU got a player from St. Louis? Joe?
Renell Wren? Was he from St. Louis?
Good. I think you're right.
Or he was from Missouri.
How far away is wherever Keyshawn Elliott's from?
Isn't he from some like small town or?
Yeah, I don't know the Missouri map, but
was it more like a suburb of Kansas City, kind of? I don't know.
Somewhere over there.
I know. By the way, I think my counterpart at the University of Kansas website, he said, like, man, how the hell did Kansas not get Keyshawn Elliott and ASU did? So
Real was born in St. Louis, and I know he's from Missouri, so okay, I'll feel confident with that pick.
Former Steelers great Renell Wren.
Yes. But Mason Martin, who I think is battling an injury, I'm not sure if he's going to be available for spring practice, but he's another true freshman that folks on the team are telling me to be on the lookout. One of kind of like in the Martell Hughes frame, a total linebacker. Again, it's going to be hard for him, I think, to get into the rotation, but maybe a name to keep in mind for 2027 and beyond. But if AJ Cooper does an awesome job with this linebacker group. I'm pretty sure that when I bumped into him in the San Diego airport, he had a big smile on his face. Couldn't say a whole lot, why I was there, who he saw, and everything. But it was to see Martell Hughes, and looking back, that smile on his face in the San Diego airport was definitely warranted because, like you said, Joe, that guy's been an absolute stud, and barely playing and still just making play after play after play, having studs in front of him in the 2 deep. And now that the spotlight's going to shine on him, he should definitely have an absolute breakout year. Very excited to see what he brings to the table.
A guy, cut from that Kyson Brown mold, a Barrett honors student as well, and high school safety. As the conversion has paid off pretty well, and great. The big things to come. All right, as we hit the home stretch here, let's talk cornerback. Gentlemen, is it Rodney Bimage time?
Has to be.
It's got to be. Yeah, you got. I don't know that I've seen better cornerback play out of anybody in the time I've watched Arizona State than what we saw from Keith Abney last year. That was just a really, really special season that he had. And so with him gone, with Javen Robinson opting to transfer to Wisconsin, and you lose some of the depth guys as well, it's an incredible opportunity for him to step right into a starting role. And though they did some work in the transfer portal, you didn't necessarily bring in guys that at least on paper look like they're like recruiting over him, so to speak,
Ashton Stamps from LSU, that's kind of an interesting story. He basically kind of redshirted himself in 2025. That's clashing with the head coaching staff there. But 2024, he definitely was a very, very good cornerback at the SEC level. Obviously, 27 games with LSU, 17 starts. Overall, posted 75 tackles, 18 pass breakups, including 14 in that category in 2024. So Stamps and Bimage being the starters, I think that's something we can expect to see. I know Brian Carrington is discounting on younger guys like Caleb Chester and Nigel Pringle. Chester came from Texas, Pringle came from Arkansas. To really be just the foundation for years to come and really round up the 2 deep. Obviously, returning player in Joseph Smith. Was somebody who, could really just elevate his play this year. But, the cornerback position, I think, might be in a better position. That's a mouthful. Than people think it would be after losing Abby and losing Javen Robinson, who probably didn't have that great of a year compared to 2024, but still, a grizzled veteran that you lose, that's something really to sneeze at. But Bimage and Stamps as the starters, I think, could be a pretty good starting cornerback for these Sun Devils.
I think it's underrated the way that Brian Carrington is able to recruit not just like incredible athletes, but between the ears. Mm-hmm. Like he finds a certain type of player in his position room where they're ready to go. If their number is called, they're going to jump in. And you think back to Keith Abney and Javen Robinson a couple of years ago, the 2024 season, they hadn't played a ton of snaps. Yeah. They ended up playing a ton at a pretty high level, and then you just kind of continue to slot underneath and bring those guys in. And there's always going to be some attrition and some guys moving on and this and that, but it does feel like it's Rodney Bimage's moment to really take over this room. And obviously a lot of these transfers are highly touted guys coming out of high school, maybe not a ton of college experience, but I trust him maybe more than anybody else on the staff to have someone that's like, we haven't seen it yet, but we're going to, and it's going to be at a high level.
And I feel like you're comfortable if those are your 2 deep guys versus guys that you're forcing into the starting lineup 100%. Would be your starting pair. So you can give them a little grace, give them a little, flack to be able to work with. But man, that starting pair could be solid because if Stamps can get back whatever, I didn't watch LSU close enough to know what the difference was between 2024 and 2025 with that kind of self-red shirt deal, and I know the coaching change was a thing as well. Reading the tea leaves sound like there were a few things that contributed to that, but yeah, if you can get anything out of him comparable to what you got in what LSU got out of him in 2024, then that's kind of a home run in itself. And again, like we talked about other position groups where you're losing either an abundance of players or some high-tier players or both, this could be a position group where the change from last year to this year is not quite as drastic as you might have thought.
All right, let's talk some safety. So there's some returning players here that could factor in because, of course, you're losing Ghost Rouser and Xavier Alford. We'll talk about in a second. Some guys stepped in. A lot of new faces here that are really intriguing to me. Lyric Rawls coming from Kansas. One of those guys that probably is you can put it in Penn starting lineup there. But instead of going and get a guy from Pitt, they go to Penn State and Antoine Belgrave shorter. Josiah McGrew wildly productive at FIU. Kind of some of the newcomers, but it's kind of we talked about it. Is it Rodney Bimich time at the safety spot? Is it Tana time?
It really has to be because he's another guy that has huge shoes to fill at the strong safety. Miles Ghost-Rouser, obviously exhausting eligibility. Montana Warren is somebody, as we all know, played all three safety positions with varying degrees of success, but I really think that strong safety is his absolute best niche. He's somebody that also has shown flashes here and there. Maybe unlike a guy like Martell Hughes, kind of let the depth maybe prevent him from really, showing his full potential. But I think he's somebody that has to have a breakout year for this safety position to really be formidable. Lyric Rawls, stud addition out of the portal. I mean, again, just like sometimes this stuff just really amazes me. Just getting the caliber of transfer portal guys that they're getting, and that's one guy when the news broke in the huddle that ASU is in the running. I just subscriber after subscriber. If we don't get anybody, that's the one guy that we have to get, and I think that's definitely warranted, and in terms of the hype. Everybody's asking about nickel. What's going to happen? I know that until Kendrick Breedlove kind of settled into the position. That is one position that did struggle, quite a bit. I think right now it looks like Boogie Wilson is going to be maybe the starting nickel when fall camp starts. He's going to be out of spring due to injury. But keep your eye on a young returning player, Ben Alafeo-Lilly, to give Boogie Wilson some depth over there at nickel. And again, because Wilson is going to be pretty much out of contact in spring practice, I think Alafeo-Lilly is going to be your starting nickel, at least just for spring practice. You got a guy like Kai McDonald, who I think might play more free safety than nickel, but a guy that also did play nickel. But I really do like the transfer portal additions that they did have over here. I mean the guy from FIU, Josiah. Look at name over here.
Josiah McGrew. That's one that I was going to chime in on as well.
Yeah, Josiah McGrew. Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy that grew up in Tallahassee, loved Florida State. Florida State didn't give him the time of day. He says, "Okay, I'm going to FIU and kick butt." And as a freshman, he played really well, put up great numbers. And I think that is somebody who's definitely going to find himself in the rotation here in Tempe. And yeah, I mean, obviously when you get a guy like Belgrave Shorter from Penn State, I think that's a guy that also is going to play quite a bit here at ASU. So I really do like what they did at the safety position. I mean, like I said, Brad, I mean, obviously you didn't have Alfred for the entire year, but now you just don't have him on the roster period. You don't have Ghost Rouser. How do you fill those positions? And Boogie Wilson obviously showed us a lot, but man, he just really needs to get out of that injury, over that injury bug. And again, unfortunately, not going to be available for the spring. But if Boogie Wilson can stay healthy and play at the level that he did last year, Montana Warren can really find his niche at strong safety. And now you just have the newcomers around them play well. this is going to be one of the stronger positions on the team, I feel.
I think like Boogie Wilson's almost like the football equivalent to like New Contradas, like someone that when he's out there, like among the best, but man, you just gotta stay healthy. A little more depth on McGrew because that's a guy that I was going to chime in on, man. When that announcement was made and kind of, when the transfers come in, you start looking them up and you're like, whoa, okay. As you said, so the numbers on him in 2025, he's a true freshman, played all 12 games, 68 tackles, 4 picks, 5 PBUs. He was a freshman All-American, second-team All-Conference, all-freshman team within Conference USA. So in just 1 year there at FIU, put up some numbers. And so that's someone that I'm really eager to see. And again, FIU, even though it's a G5, G6 program, it's still an FBS program. This isn't necessarily as huge of a flyer, as big of a step up as some other transfers have to make. So he's someone that, again, just based on 1 year of productivity at the college level, gives you the impression that he can make something happen here. And
if I remember correctly, McGrew was one of the late guys also, kind of later in the process where they were just able to add on. And I think it's going to be really important, the Jordan with an obvious statement here. Boogie getting back healthy. Yeah. I think he was the unsung hero of that team last year because obviously X is going to be a huge, you're going to miss him a ton. You missed him a ton when he was injured. Boogie sure cleaned up a lot of stuff and made you not forget about X ever, but, for the drop-off to be pretty not substantial, that was pretty impressive for him to come in. And a guy, I think, just again going back to the culture, like adds to this room and what the identity of what this team wants to be. So you get him back and you start to pair some of these newcomers over there. I am very interested in how this room kind of shakes out.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a shame we have to wait on the Lyric and Boogie safety tandem.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that would have been fun. But
the musical connection there with Lyrics and Boogies. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. So that Boogie told me, like, we talked about that when we had him on the show, and they're thinking about like some branding opportunities there. But all right, let's close things out with a look at special teams. A couple spots, not a whole lot of intrigue. They brought over Carson Smith to take over the the big shoes of Jesus Gomez at place kicker. But he was an FCS All-American, so we'll see exactly how that pans out. It's again, Gomez raised the standard of place kicking after a disastrous 2024. Yeah. Grayson Curtis will be the long snapper. He's coming over from New Mexico State. The big question is going to be at punter, where that was a position of a lot of headaches for ASU fans last year. Canyon Floyd is back, presumably going to be looking to be in a healthier spot than he was last year, but the massive Australian Nick McClarty coming over from Ohio State. How are we thinking about that battle after for now, I guess, full-time special teams coordinator Jack Nudo? Mike Cyphers, former NFL punter, is going to be on staff as well to provide some more detailed instruction. But quite frankly, the kick game was good last year. The punt game, not so good.
It's going to be a field position game. Like, these Big 12 games are so close all the time that there are moments that you can point to where the field position either helped win a game or potentially helped, not win a game. Getting that figured out, I think it's going to be really important. You need to remember Canyon Floyd. I'm curious the last 2 years how much we've actually seen of him either as a true freshman or not fully right as a sophomore, because he came out as one of the most highly touted guys. And I know that doesn't necessarily equate to success, but I know a lot of people that were excited for him on the Horizon side when he came to ASU, and a lot of people on the ASU side very, very excited, but it just hasn't quite come together. Some of it I don't think is necessarily on him. It's just out of his control. But you bring in the viral sensation, Nick McClarty, who punts over stadiums.
It's like those old Powerade commercials, like back in the early 2000s, like Michael Vick, throwing it out of the stadium and stuff like that. Yeah. But I mean, for this, so I thought that Floyd he's had positive moments, and I feel like the Matt McKenzie experiment, and I'm not saying Kane Floyd had a perfect season, but I feel like the Matt McKenzie experiment pulled the position group down a lot, because when he was out there, all due respect, it was just really, really rough to watch. So I feel like if Floyd just can continue to grow and continue to improve, his numbers technically were better last year by like a yard, and it's still not great, but it was up a little bit last year from his freshman year. If he can get that going a little bit and maybe add like 2 yards onto his average, getting in that 43 to 44 yard range, I think that's something folks can be, comfortable with. Obviously, it's a function of the coverage and everything like that. But yeah, I'm eager to see with McLarty, because it's one of those deals where, is it a good thing that he was at Ohio State, because that's obviously a national championship caliber program, but he didn't get a ton of time there. So what do we really, expect out of him? Is that going to be a true legitimate battle, or just maybe him more as a backup because of the fact that Floyd's had some injury issues? But I'm counting on Floyd to kind of redeem the position group. I'm putting a ton of pressure on him, apparently. I think that by the end of the year, maybe my bold hot take is that people will say, all right, the punting is not as bad. We're not complaining about it as much. It's not as terrible as it once was. That is my optimistic prediction for this year.
I think kind of under the radar, Nick McLarty, 6'7". He might be one of the most important players on the team, because I think if somebody can really push Cannon Floyd, I think that will make him better. I think Cannon Floyd has not been pushed from day one. Now, sure he had the health issues, and just like Boogie Wilson, maybe to a lesser extent, he needs to show that he's healthy, because I think when he's healthy, yes, he could be one of the better punters we've seen in recent memory, but that's just a huge question mark. And so to me, like, okay, can Nick McLarty really push him? Can Nick McLarty even maybe overcome Floyd and be the starter? Maybe a very, very, low storyline in the myriad of storylines we're going to have here coming into this week. But, that's something that I think right now does kind of worry me. Carson Smith, I know that he didn't have like a great touchback, ratio, but I just gotta trust Jack Nuno, who did coach him at Austin Peay, that he did obviously bring him for a reason. And in terms of long snapping, Grayson Curtis and Tyler Wigglesworth, I think both of them are going to be okay, in that regard. By the way, Jaron Hamilton is probably going to be the primary kick returner in spring practice. I think he definitely has maybe more of a niche there than he does a wide receiver, but I think that can also even out.
Was it him or was it Noble Johnson? Who was it that had the kickoff return for a touchdown called back?
That was
of the many.
That was Hamilton.
That was Hamilton.
Okay.
That was Hamilton.
Of the many,
Special
how
teams
many
flag.
yards, not just yards that ASU lost on penalties, but like points that were taken.
Too
off the
soon,
board.
Joe.
Yeah.
Too soon.
Yeah.
And Corey Butler is probably going to be the primary punt returner, by the way. But yeah, special teams. I think all of us are just really kind of sick of just talking about the shortcomings of this position, and there's nothing really eye-popping in terms of additions over here. So maybe, between Carson Smith and Nick McLarty, maybe they're going to really be pleasant surprises when it's all said and done. But again, just really come in, and if not start, just push the starter in front of you. Just elevate the overall talent of this group. Is that possible? We'll see. But I just, I hope ASU fans aren't sitting here, October, November, saying like, man, do we miss Jesus Gomez? Because that could be an issue. Because Jesus Gomez, I know one game I know he won for sure for ASU, and I know in some other games without his leg, ASU would have one or more 2 games in the L column.
The Texas Tech game probably doesn't happen if not for Jesus Gomez.
Baylor, last season was rough, but it could have been worse for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Smith has some solid numbers: 14 out of 17 last year, long of 50. His career long is 53, so he can make kicks beyond 50. Maybe not the 55 to 57 yarders like Gomez brought to Tempe, because he did have those credentials from Eastern Michigan. So, I don't think that we're necessarily, I'm not going to throw people under the bus by naming names of the past, but just as we've seen some bad punting, we've seen some bad place kicking in other years as well. So it may be a step back, but he's an experienced kicker. He's a qualified kicker. He may have some limitations, whether it's kickoffs, whether it's the length from which he can consistently make field goals. But I hope and think that it won't be a dramatic step down. Hopefully he's not in a ton of situations where you got to go out and make this 48-yarder or lose the game. But again, I think there should be some quality there. I'm hoping and thinking, and maybe I'm just getting in the ground level of predicting improvement, so I could be the one to say I told you so. But I could be completely wrong. I think that the special teams, I feel like they maybe can only improve. So maybe it's an easy statement to say that they'll improve, but I think that there could be some steps in the right
and
direction.
Tempe is such an elevation-friendly place
Yeah.
for punters and kickers, third only to Colorado and Utah, where people go to ski every year. Okay, so come on, we're helping you out over here, Mr. Kicker, Mr. Punter. Now, please return the favor.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this spring practice preview episode of Speak of the Devils. A huge thanks to Jake Mowry on the ones and twos in the booth. Go Pitt. Hopefully the Panthers will be able to do some things in the ACC this year. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the time. Jordan, doing a bunch of great things over as usual. How can people stay up, with all your great work?
Yeah, so we'll be doing a lot of spring football stuff, a lot of ASU men's basketball coaching search, ASU women's basketball, as long as their tournament run goes, over at Sports 360 AZ, so you can follow us there. And then my personal handles are at Jordy Hamm.
And good stuff always in the huddle. How can people take advantage? I believe you guys have a kind of a pretty nice promotion going on right now.
We got a spring special, 50% off. No lack of news this time of year. ASU basketball coaching search, spring practice reports, and let's not forget that a lot of the recruiting these days does take place in the spring. So a few weeks from now, we're going to see a bunch of big-time visitors come through the gates of Tempe. There's going to be a lot to cover, obviously ASU baseball as well too. So head over to devilsdigest.com. We got our 50% sale going strong.
All right, we might have to do this again in like 5 weeks or so and really see how we our prognostications held firm over spring practice. But definitely make sure you stay with the show on the social media side of things. You can follow on Twitter at SOTD Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. And like us on Facebook. And give me a follow on all things social media at BDowney29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. We got to give a huge thank you, huge shout out to our awesome sponsors, of course, topping the list, of course, devilsdigest.com. It might be like one of the most important times that there's been in a while to be in the huddle with all the things going on. Big pendulum swing for football. You talked about the coaching search for men's basketball, baseball is rolling, and I hope that continues. So get in the huddle on devilsdigest.com and also support our great friends Burrito Express. They are popping up locations everywhere, which is awesome. You love to see it. CactusSports.com is where you go to buy the best ASU merchandise. Get there now. Jones Auto Group, nice pest company, rocking them here on my chest. Sun Devil Family Charities and More Lending LLC, branch NMLS number 2732146, and PJ Saturno NMLS number 257912.
And once you're done supporting all of our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week recapping week 1 of spring ball.